Patrick Brown was chosen Ontario Progressive Conservative Party leader last month in a landslide win. The PCs may have lost 4 consecutive elections, but Brown thinks he can make the party relevant again. Let's find out how. In his first feature interview since becoming leader, here's Patrick Brown, the former Conservative MP for Barrie, now PC party leader here in Ontario. Welcome here for the first of what I hope will be many conversations during your time as PC party leader.
Well, Steve, it's an honor and a privilege to be on the agenda.
It isn't really, but that's okay. I appreciate you saying that. Your convention victory was really quite something because not many people saw it coming when you got into the race last fall. The caucus was overwhelmingly for your opponent. The results were overwhelmingly for you. So question one, what have you done to kind of get the caucus together since your victory?
Well, let me say that caucus has been fantastic. The unity I've seen has been phenomenal. I had some distinct organizational plans for the party that I needed everyone to buy into in terms of building the party, whether it is in Northern Ontario, whether it is in multicultural Ontario, getting more young people involved. And I had some assignments for caucus, and everyone bought in day one, and I'm very fortunate that we have that level of unity in our party. And I'd say one of my first steps as leader was to actually go to the areas of the province where the party wasn't particularly strong, and to go with caucus members who I knew added real value. I went down to Windsor, where the party has not been historically strong, and we had an incredible membership drive down there. I've made 2 trips to Northern Ontario already in my first 3 weeks as leader of the party. I went up with Vic Fideli, who was one of my competitors in the leadership, and Vic has phenomenal knowledge in Northern Ontario. Frankly, almost everyone we bumped into in Northern Ontario, he actually knew already. It was something like I've never seen before.
But what's the point of all that?
Well, one, Vic has been working in Northern Ontario for a long time, and I think many people in Northern Ontario felt that the party wasn't present. We did miss the Northern Leaders debate. They weren't target ridings. And
when you say we, you're talking about in the 2014 election. The PCs didn't show.
No, and that's something that I pledged to take a very different approach on. So I gave speeches last week in Timmins, Espanola, and Sudbury, and I was the guest speaker at the Ontario Mining Expo. Additionally, obviously, the Ring of Fire visit with Vic and a speech in North Bay. And my comments in Northern Ontario were this: we're back, we're going to be present, and frankly, I believe Northern Ontario shares conservative values. And if you look at Northern Ontario, if you look at the key industries, whether it's mining, whether it's forestry, the policies advocated by the NDP and Liberals are to the detriment of Northern Ontario. Northern Ontario actually needs a voice to stand up for the fact that the mining sector has been stagnant, that we've gone from first in the Fraser Report rankings for mining investments to 23rd, that the forestry sector has lost half their jobs.
And you're going to be that voice?
Absolutely, the Conservative Party.
Let me ask you about Christine Elliott, whom you defeated last month for the leadership. Have you spoken to her since Victory Day?
Yeah, me and Christine have communicated, and my message to Christine was this, both on the phone and over digital communication, is that I have a lot of affection and appreciation for Christine Elliott's contributions to our party, and there's right now, I understand she's had a very difficult year, and she's going to be welcome back. She's going to be a leader and a star in a party at whatever point she is ready. There is no rush.
She has not come back to Queen's Park since then yet.
No,
right?
and I understand she's going to take a little bit of a vacation, a little of a break, and frankly, that's well deserved.
When she comes back, is she your deputy leader?
If Christine wants to be the deputy leader, then I would have her as my deputy leader.
Has she said whether she's going to stick it out to the end of the term?
Those are conversations we haven't had yet, but certainly I'm happy to have Christine involved in the party in whatever shape or form she wants.
You're also in a bit of an odd situation in that the former leader, Tim Hudak, is still there. He's actually in the caucus. Is that awkward?
No, listen, Tim has said that he's a team player, and he understands the party's going to take a different approach. There's been no indication that there's been any level of uncomfort with that.
I know you've left federal politics, but federal politics has not entirely left you. And you know where I'm going with this. The federal NDP, one of the MPs there, has asked the Speaker to investigate you because he says while you were running for the PC leadership here in Ontario, you were taking a salary even though you were basically absent from the House of Commons federally. Got a response to that?
Well, first of all, I realize that NDP are in a lot of trouble themselves with the BOIE investigation into their misallocation of $2.7 million. I think this was a diversion tactic. And frankly, I imagine the NDP MPs are frustrated. The NDP MPPs are frustrated. Right now, they have almost all the seats in Northern Ontario, and I'm drawing big crowds in Northern Ontario. We're pointing out the fact that their party does not stand for Northern Ontario. And so if you look at Gilles Besson, obviously who is pushing this.
Timmins James Bay.
Timmins James Bay. We sold record numbers of memberships in his riding, in Moosonee, in Timmins. I'm going to win that seat next election. We're going to win seats in Northern Ontario that have not been up for grabs before. And I realize the NDP, that puts them in a level of being uncomfortable. But the reality was nothing was done wrong. And if the NDP, I think, looks hypocritical when they asked for the BOIE to look at something, when they had their own leadership and none of the MPs, and I listed all the MPs, they chose not to even ask for the BOE to look at all their MPs that participated in the leadership at the same time. And I would mark that I had a better voting turnout and I had a better presence in Ottawa than all the MPs in their party that ran for leadership.
There was an acronym there people may not know. The Board of Internal Economy? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, BOIE. Let me ask you, let's get back to Queen's Park then. The Quebec Premier was here a few weeks ago. Historic visit, first time I think since 1964 that a Quebec Premier was granted the right to speak to MPPs on the floor of the legislature. And you, at first, gave a kind of a statesman-like address, welcoming him, recognizing the significance of the victory. But then you did sort of do a U-turn in the middle of the speech and took some shots at the government for what, in your view, is their lack of fiscal prowess and energy prices being too high.
Well, Steve, let me say
was that appropriate?
Well, Steve, let me say this. I praise the Quebec Premier for his record of having balanced budgets and low energy prices. The Premier chose to praise him on cap and trade. I chose to praise him on balanced budgets and low energy prices, which I believe to be important. The fact that made Premier Wynne very uncomfortable, that I talked about balanced budgets and low energy prices. Obviously that's something that she has to talk about. That's something that she owns, because those have not been priorities for her in Ontario. I didn't talk about the fact that Ontario, has unfortunately departed from any interest in low energy prices or balanced budgets.
Pretty unmistakable inference to be drawn, right?
Well, it is a contrast, and frankly, that says a lot. That says a lot that you can't even talk. Where are we in Ontario today that complementing balanced budgets and low energy prices would be considered a stark attack?
Because it's your motive people were questioning. You weren't praising the Premier of Quebec. You were using an opportunity to take a shot at the Premier of Ontario. That's what they were saying.
And the reality is, the approach that this government has taken on balanced budgets and energy has not been in the best interest of Ontario. And if people are to draw that from my comments praising Quebec, then I'm glad they took that inference. And I will use every opportunity I can to fight for what's in the best interest of Ontario. And I believe balanced budgets and competitive energy prices are in the best interest of Ontario.
I'm going to come back to electricity prices in a second, but one more housekeeping item here. You've said you want a seat sooner than later. Are we going to see an announcement this week about that?
As soon as I decide to make an announcement, I'll make sure that you're one of the very first that knows about it.
I think I know about it already. It's happening Wednesday, right?
I am making. I'm certainly not making an announcement Wednesday, but let me say this. My priority right now is building the party organizationally and financially. I want to make sure that the party has the type of infrastructure that I believe we didn't have in the last election.
You're the kind of guy, though. I'm blue skying here. You had your chance to give a farewell address on the floor of the House of Commons, which was important to you as you were departing as the MP for Barrie. My hunch is you would want to give that same opportunity to whoever was going to step aside and create a by-election for you. That means this week, right? Is the House not rising this week?
There's no announcements planned this week.
Oh, there's no announcements planned this week. Huh. So we're looking like the fall then before this happens.
My priority right now is building the organization and the finances of the party. This is a giant province. Too many people think that everything happens at Queen's Park. You have no I think there's sometimes people forget how much work exists outside of Queen's Park, and the need that we don't get stuck in that bubble, and that, obviously I intend to be at Queen's Park sooner than later, but there is a tremendous amount of work that can be done outside of Queen's Park.
No, fair enough.
And that period of time I'm going to use to the best of my abilities.
Let me raise one thing you did at Queen's Park just this very morning. You came out against the sale, the Liberals' proposed sale of 60% of Hydro One. An odd position, because Liberals are supposed to be those who want to keep public assets in the province's hands, and Conservatives are supposed to be the ones who want to privatize state assets. How come things have flipped?
Well, I said this in my comments this morning. I'm not against privatization. I think in some cases privatization has merits. In the case of Hydro One, I don't look at things strictly through partisan blinders, whether it's Liberal, NDP, or Conservative. I'm really going to try to look at every proposal. Does it benefit the province of Ontario? Last week I complimented the Liberals on 2 different initiatives. I will compliment the Liberals if it makes sense for Ontario. But on the issue of this sale, I took a while to study it. I took a while to give my analysis, and what we kept on coming back to is this: we are losing majority control. This was founded in 1906 by Sir Adam Beck, and it was when they had the first demonstration of electricity in Ontario. They lit up a sign that it's for the people. Now we're losing that. This is a natural monopoly. People don't have a choice whether to use power or not. And when you lose majority control, here's the real problems that flows from that. We have no control over rate increases. And if there's
that's that's not going to be the case. The Ontario Energy Board is still going
Steve,
to be.
How often has the Ontario Energy Board turned down a rate increase? Once in a blue moon.
The size of the rate increase they have turned down frequently.
Once in a blue moon. The reality is it's based on cost, and that's how the rate increases are judged. And whether it is a 13% or 11% increase, you're going to see the government lose control over rate increases. That is a fact. Secondly, this will be not based on what's in the best interest of Ontario. Say, for example, we need to build transmission lines in Northern Ontario to make a major mining project happen. What if there's a remote community that doesn't have, the business case doesn't actually add up? We can no longer make choices on energy based on what's in the best interest of Ontario. And so I'm very concerned that we lose that ability. But additionally, what I think all Ontarians should be concerned about is oversight. It was historic when the 8 independent officers of Parliament issued a letter saying that they were concerned about losing oversight.
This is the
over
Environment Commissioner, the Ombudsman, the Privacy Commissioner,
Never before
and on
have
and
they
on.
all wrote a letter together and saying we are losing oversight. If you look at the Ombudsman report, there was 10,000 complaints into Hydro One. And here's the real concern. We are not losing oversight when this becomes a private company. We're losing oversight the day that the budget passes. To have no oversight, despite the fact we've seen some of the most egregious examples of mismanagement in Hydro One, this should be alarming. This should be alarming, and that's why I'm leading the charge against this deal, because it's a bad deal for Ontario. And it's not about what is an ideological. People say Conservatives should be for every privatization. Liberals should be against every privatization. I don't believe in ideological compartments. I told that to you 2 months ago on this show. I believe that as a pragmatic Conservative, our governing mantra should always be, what is in the best interest of this province? This is a bad deal. This is not in the best interest of Ontario.
In our remaining moments, I want to switch to education. Big topic these days. If you become Premier of the province in 3 years, in order to avoid the kind of wildcat strikes, illegal strikes, legal strikes, work-to-rule situations, would you simply pass a bill saying it's illegal for teachers in this province to go on strike?
Yeah, I think it's premature to make that policy announcement today. What I would say is this: the Bill 122 process that has 2-tiered negotiations, that has negotiations at a local level, negotiations at a provincial level, and nothing gets done. And I think, frankly, that's the way the government wants it. They want to kick the ball down the road, and it's not fair to teachers. It's not fair to students.
So at the least, you'd scrap that.
I'd scrap Bill 122. The reality is we know the money and the decisions are being made on a provincial level. This is a game. The government has treated the classroom as a game, and that's going to be on the Premier's watch. The fact that we've had major chaos in the classroom, That's something the Liberals promised would never be the case when they ran for their very first mandate under Dalton McGuinty. It was about peace in the classroom. We don't have that today. We don't.
That's because they want net zeros for contract settlements. Do you think that's a worthwhile goal?
Well, actually, and if you hear what's coming out of the negotiations, it wasn't about net zeros. It appeared that the sticking issues were on classroom sizes and prep time. So, we're not there. We're not privy to these negotiations. The net result right now is that we've had some of the greatest educational disruptions we've had in a decade. They're responsible.
Patrick Brown, we have merely scratched the surface today, but I suspect we'll scratch a little deeper in the ensuing weeks, months, and years that you're Ontario PC party leader. So we thank you for coming in for the first of what I expect will be several interviews over that period of time. Congratulations, and thanks for coming in at TVO tonight.
I look forward to future ones. And by the way, it is a privilege for me because I'm one of the folks that actually watches your show.
Glad to hear that. Thank you very much. That's Patrick Brown, the new Ontario PC party leader.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.